So, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our latest Pilot's Career Spotlight webinar. I am today joined by my great friend and colleague, Amina Waheed, who is here to talk about her career in piloting, talk about her multiple careers, piloting, doctor, charity trustee, incredible woman who is inspiring and who is breaking stereotypes, who is changing perception, changing ways in which we perceive work-life balance. I'll say that. So, can we all just welcome Ravina? Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you. Come say hello to the team.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. Lovely to see you again and to have the volunteers and attendees join as well. I thought it'd be best to just do a summary about what I've been up to so far, and then if there are any questions, I'm happy to be guided by discussion from you. And it's nice to see familiar names as well in the chat. So a little bit about myself, my background. I guess I could take it all the way back to the start. From when I was a very young child, I knew that I always wanted to be a doctor. And that's how I went through life in those early stages, knowing that I was going to go down the medical route. And so when I studied subjects at school, etc., that's the path I followed. However, I always loved aircraft as well, airplanes. Everyone here, I think, would empathize or relate to the feeling of knowing, without explanation, you just have this immense appreciation for flying and aviation. And it's not always something you can explain. So I always liked flying, and I actually got into radio controlled airplanes growing up. I bought a radio controlled airplane after saving up over a couple of months because they weren't cheap even back then. And I used to actually save up my school dinner money. So I wouldn't eat school dinners, I'd save that money so that I could buy this plane. And then when I bought it, I flew it and immediately crashed it, which was all that money then wasted. And I was heartbroken. And I thought, well, I need to find another way to enjoy this interest. So I learned to build them from scratch. And I would buy the foam board, the motor, the parts, all of that, put it together, and then try to fly those. And of course, as you'd expect, it wasn't always very successful. It took a lot of attempts to get something flying. But eventually I did manage to, and that was an immensely rewarding way to explore that interest, because not all of us will have the resources to immediately go into flying light aircraft, for example, or doing flight simulator. So you have to be resourceful and use what you have to explore that interest. And that's what I did. And I went to medical school because that's what I wanted to do. And I was very fortunate to get into one university that I, quite like the look of, because it was an engineering university. So I thought I could still explore that interest. I went to Imperial, and they had a pilots club there, and I joined that pilots club because I still had that interest. There were, I would describe as boys that had private pilots licenses, and I thought this is something only reserved for a certain demographic, older, lots of money. But when I saw people my own age have these licenses, I thought it's something that I could attain. The only difference really is that I didn't have the money behind me to go ahead and do that. So I applied for scholarship funding, and I was lucky to get a few scholarships, which I'm happy to talk about later on as well, which kick-started that journey. And having an organization back you is a really, it's a financial boost, but also a morale boost rather. So I started off with that. And during my final year of medical school, I did bite the bullet and decide to do my whole PPL as well. And I obtained my PPL in the same month I graduated as a doctor, which was a very busy month. And I've been flying private aircraft, a Cessna 150 most recently, ever since. During my first year as a doctor, I applied to the BA Speedbird Pilot Academy and was very fortunate to be successful. That I then started 1 or 2 months ago, and I'm currently in Skyborne at the Bournemouth campus studying for my Mod 1 exams, which are next week. So wish me luck for that. That's a whistle-stop tour of my life so far.
Oh, bless you, Amina. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it is such a busy time for you. It's a busy time for everybody with Christmas coming up, but it is incredibly busy with you, for you with the exams. So it's so wonderful to have you here. I mean, I don't even know where to start. First of all, also wanted to say apologies for the accidental screen sharing. Hopefully it didn't
Okay.
distract you too much.
No,
We've
not at
fixed
all.
that. Yes, but in terms of, talking about balance. Let's talk a bit about balance. I know, especially this time of year, but to be fair, any time of year, how do you decide what to focus on? How do you prioritize your task? How do you prioritize the different parts of your life? What is it? Is it that you've kind of decided, right, it is piloting, that's where my heart is, that's where my future is, and that's where you're dedicating most of your time and energy and efforts? Or is it kind of trying to find balance? I mean, family and friends and personal life, I don't even know where you find time for that. Talk to us a bit about prioritization. What are your techniques? What are your tools? What are your secrets?
I have to say I'm probably not the best person to talk about work-life balance, but I do try. So I can touch on things that work for me. You asked a few questions in there, I suppose. One was about prioritization, maybe task management as well, and then balance with personal, maintaining a life outside of the work that you do. I think the thing that struck me the most about what you said, or what first came to mind, is that I never had a timeline for all of this. So I didn't, go into it thinking, right, I'm going to do med school, then I'm going to get my PPL, then I'm going. It was never sort of by design. It was always being open to opportunity. And I think that's something that I would take away, is that you don't necessarily need to see where you're going to be in, miles from now. You just need to be able to see the next 100 meters or so. So that's how I've always done it, because otherwise you become overwhelmed, and you really can't predict things that far out in the future anyway. I think COVID is a really good reminder of how sort of the best laid plans of mice and men that have fell apart in many ways for people. But yeah, so I would say, first of all, being open to opportunity and finding things and experimenting with things that you might enjoy doing. So if you have an interest or something that you think might be something you'd enjoy, I'd recommend trying it out. And not discounting yourself before you actually go ahead and do whatever it is that what endeavor you're trying to do. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I still very much make time for interests outside of academic work. I do sports and see friends and things. I think that's really important, because you have to look after your mind and your heart when you're doing all this. Otherwise, it's very difficult to maintain focus, and you burn out. And so that it's just important to look after yourself. And I don't think that has to be something that you sacrifice.
Yeah. No, no, 100%. And something you've touched upon in as part of your introduction was talking about the networks and kind of the importance of, I suppose, belonging and finding people who are there who can support you and who share that vision and support your next steps. Who did you have in your network supporting you, or I suppose were there any challenges maybe from your peers, your family? Was everybody supportive? Was everybody understanding? How did you and if not, how do you overcome some of those challenges from your close network?
Yeah, that's a good point, because no one is ever an island, and I believe, need people to help us along the way, and likewise doing the same for others. You can get there on your own, but you would just make it so much harder for yourself. So I believe in the importance of having people around you that see your vision, that support you, and they might not always. So especially early on in medical school, I was actually just lucky that the pilots club community was really open and really encouraging, and I was encouraged by pilots there to just go for it. Finding organizations as well, like the Air League, the BWPA, which is the British Women Pilots Association. There's air pilots as well, and the sort of less well heard of, so the LAA, the Light Aircraft Association, and the Royal Aero Club Trust. They're all organizations that I looked into for that kind of support as well. And now you've got so many things online. Actually, if you go on Instagram, you'd find so many organizations which offer support in so many ways. But I know it's almost a cliche, but networking is quite important. So, speaking to people and kind of being able to communicate and share your story and where it is you want to go so that they can find ways to actually support you on that journey. And I absolutely had mentors, people that really, really did support me. I'm actually very fortunate. One of the biggest mentors I've had is my flying instructor, Simon. He's based at Earlscombe Airfield. I hope you won't mind me saying, but he's massively supported me in this journey as well. Just having someone that is able to support you, but also show you where you need to develop, or someone that can give you critical feedback is very useful. So I've been very fortunate in that, and I'm always happy to pay it forward and speak to people that are sort of in a position that I was once in. I very much do empathize with that.
Oh no, again, so many things. My brain's going at 300 miles an hour thinking, oh, which one of the things that you mentioned should we pick up next? And we'll come back to paying it forward because I know there's a number of organizations that you're involved in. But let's just unpick a bit more kind of the people around you. I mean, I know there's a number of incredible organizations they exist at the moment. Flight Guard, we're very fortunate to will collaborate with a number of our partners in the charitable sector, in the not-for-profit sector. I know you are also a trustee for one of the organizations, but how do you find the people who kind of, how do you find your tribe? You said networking. Is it LinkedIn networking? Are there any specific channels? I know there's events such as Pilots Careers Live. So for individuals here on the call and listening to the recording, if you are focusing on piloting, what are those best ways to kind of find your tribe, find your supporters, find maybe the right pilot school as well? I know that's always one of the questions. Again, sorry, I'm coming up with a million different questions and packing it all into one. How do you find the right people for you and the right opportunities, especially if you're looking for some career in piloting?
Two things come to mind. One is the online space, and two, the in-person space. So online, Instagram and LinkedIn for aviation specifically, both very good resources. Social media obviously has its downsides, but also I think in this domain it's so useful because it can point you to individuals that are doing things and you can take inspiration for them or see what they're doing and see if there's something that you can learn. But also that's where events are advertised for in-person things. So PCL will be advertised on Instagram, other events. So I heard of Future Pilot at UWL. I don't know if they still do that event every year. That was pivotal in my journey, actually, that event that I attended. So yeah, those are the two spaces. Then when it comes to actually forming connections and networking, that's it can be challenging, it's daunting, isn't it, especially when, let's say, you're young, you're a teenager, or you don't have much experience to talk about. I believe coming into these spaces just curious is a huge advantage. If you can just listen to people and learn from them, always take a notebook or have your notes app open so that you can write down any interesting names or email addresses to touch base again later. I find Instagram most useful for, yes, maintaining those connections in aviation, having signposts to events that are in person. Now, I have to caveat this by saying it is harder if you don't necessarily drive yet, for example, or to get to these events, you need to, find a way, which is also not always cheap. And a lot of it is in the southeast of England. So that can also play a role when it comes to in-person things. Although I know there is a shift in movement to try and get things happening more across the UK, so it's a bit more of a level playing field. But those are my main recommendations.
No, I love that. And I think let's talk a bit about the finance. Let's talk a bit about the the elephant in the room. I know this is a topic that's often that often comes up in terms of some of the most common barriers that people see. And then we'll go back to kind of skills and applications. That's where I'm thinking, how we can develop this discussion. But talk to me about maybe the financial opportunities and how did you, if you're open to sharing that, how did you end up financing your route into becoming a pilot and to the opportunities that you're a part of at the moment? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one of the biggest issues in aviation is the cost of training. And to become technically skilled to the level of a pilot, for example, in other industries, will actually take similar financial commitment, except that there's more accessible routes usually. So, for example, let's say medicine, there are student loans available. Now, it's not necessarily the same in aviation yet, or specifically if you're talking about pilot careers, which is what makes it so difficult to access. What I did is at any stage of my life slash resources, I used what I had to explore that interest. So when I didn't have, when I wasn't earning money as a teenager, for example, when I was in school, I would use cheaper means of exploring the interest. So that would be paper planes. I would build and design those a lot. A flight simulator, there's a free one online that I use. I never paid for a flight sim. Um, Things like that to explore your interest. And then when it comes to a stage where you can apply to organizations like the Air League, for example, you've demonstrated interest in a way that didn't require a lot of financial commitment. And then the next step, like talking about scholarships, I was very fortunate, and that helped me a lot as well. Especially the Air League, I had that was a scholarship, the first one I got, but I believe being supported by them was more than just the financial benefit. It was the backing of the whole organization, which is a really useful thing when you're, for example, going down one path and you're not sure if this is something you want to explore. So that was useful. But there's no getting around the fact that it is expensive. So I worked during medical school in the capacity that I could. Summer schools, for example. Summer schools, if you have access to it, is usually quite a good way because you make quite a good amount in a small period because it's the residential thing that you're usually doing. You're working quite a lot of hours. So that can be useful, and that helped contribute some of my flying as well. And then when I started working, I was able to save some of that as well. So that was a bit easier after.
Oh no, I really hope that our audience is taking notes because I've there's so much now. There's so many nuggets of great information. There was a question about applications and cadet programs and your current path in at BA as well. What makes an application stand out? And maybe we can talk about the skills and we can talk about the experiences and how you kind of approach that. One of our listeners here is applied to the TUI program recently, but didn't get past the online interviews. So, any words of wisdom, anything in terms of skills and experiences that you think helped you stand out that you would advise our listeners to consider as well and try and develop? Please do share.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I'd say is to not be disheartened because these are really, really competitive, unimaginably competitive. So it is, it's not necessarily a reflection of you if you don't make it beyond a certain stage that you're expecting. It's just, there's a lot of people and a lot of great candidates that are trying to get that spot. What I would say is one thing that shifted my mindset. So I did apply twice to the Speedbird Pilot Academy. I got in on my second attempt. And the I had definitely a mindset shift, I think. And what that was I wasn't trying to stand out from the beginning necessarily. I was just trying not to fail at any one hurdle. So I would always see it as one step at a time. Okay, let's do the online assessments, get through the online interviews, and I would focus at each stage then. There's information online about I can talk about BA because that's I was actually not eligible for TUI because I had a night rating. So I couldn't apply to some of these. So I only applied to BA and Aer Lingus. For BA, yeah, there's a lot of information they provide online, actually on their website as to resources to use in their application process. So looking at those and the pilot competencies, making sure you're comfortable with what they are and how you can relate those back to things that you have done yourself. The pilot competencies, you should be able to access them if you Google it, I believe. And it just comes up with a list of traits that they are expecting pilots to have. So demonstrating those during interviews, etc., is something that would help you demonstrate the appropriate standard. And I get it's the most common question I get asked is how did you stand out, etc. But it's a very difficult one to answer because I don't think it was necessarily about standing out. It was just about showing that you meet every single one of their criteria, that that you can communicate, you can make decisions, you're willing to learn and accept feedback, and that you work well with others. Those are just a handful of the traits they'd be looking for. And I think that's things that you develop through exploring your interest. Going to Pilot Careers Live, for example, will develop your communication because you're talking to so many people, etc. So those are the things that I did, which I believe helped in making a successful application.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much. And I think it probably is not just focusing so much on I don't have X, Y, Z, I don't meet these criteria. It's about really thinking laterally almost and thinking how can I use the experiences that I have had and the opportunities that I have had and different projects that I worked on, volunteering opportunities, previous careers, everything, all the portfolio of things that I've done and how can I actually relate it back to what's required. I mean, do you think your career in as a doctor helped as well? How did you talk to us about that? Because we're focusing on you being a pilot, but how do you yes what's going on? How can you be a pilot and a doctor? How do you combine the two?
Of course, being a doctor, those skills helped. But I always say you don't have to be a doctor to get into something like this. I'm wary of not giving across that impression that, okay, I need to have gone to medical school, I need to have got a PPL to. I'm with people from all sorts of backgrounds, teachers, police, people that never went to university, people that have worked in corporate environments. It's a real mix of individuals from all sorts of backgrounds, young people that are really young, people that are older. And it's really not about necessarily how much experience you've accrued, but more about whether or not you can talk about those experiences and link them back to what they're looking for and how you reflect on what it is that you've done. So even, for example, having a part-time job, that covers so many skills. You're making decisions, you're communicating, customer service. If you can talk about, and I've had people ask me, oh, I've only driven Ubers before. Is that, are they going to look down upon that? And I think, no, that's brilliant. You've shown motivation. You've shown, you're a self-starter. You're actually manually handling a vehicle as well, which I think is always quite relevant. So it's about talking about the experience that you have had. Being a doctor for me was, yes, there are so many skills that correlate, which is why you actually don't find it's not rare to find doctors in the aviation world, because I think there is a lot of overlap in what we do. So keeping calm under pressure, making decisions, reflecting, all of that is really relevant, and has definitely helped me. Being a doctor while doing the process wasn't easy either. So I was still working full time while going through the however many stages BA put you through to get in. And I was smart with my annual leave, so I would try and save that up in case I was called to go into interviews, for example. And I tried to set aside time where I was less tired to do some of the online assessments, because I know a lot of people applying will either be in full-time school or full-time work, so that can be a challenge as well.
And I'm so glad you've touched upon motivation, because one of the questions we actually had was around motivation and determination and what fuels you. Why piloting? Why getting up every day? Why waking up and going to X many jobs and doing it? Why many exams? What is that thing that really well doesn't keep you up at night? I suppose is the opposite. It helps you
Gets
get
you
up in
gets
the
you up in the
mornings.
morning,
Yes,
I guess.
that's it. That's the one.
Two things. I really like a challenge, and I really don't like being bored. So I think you combine those, and that's how you end up doing, all the stuff that I've mentioned. But on a sort of more, to more seriously answer your question, I guess I've always leaned into challenges, um, and I've followed my interests. I've been very lucky to have been able to do that, actually, to not let that voice of your inner child leave, to sort of nurture it and actually do interests that you always found engaging as a child, to continue that into adulthood. So following my interests, I'd say is one of the things that does motivate me, overcoming challenges and trying to trying to give back and trying to make, it's a bit cliche, but make things a bit better than when you found them. Whether that be through medicine and looking after people in that sense, or in aviation where there's a lot of scope for you to, um, I think, take care of those around you and to give back to the world as well. Because I've been so immensely supported by so many individuals. I couldn't even name all of them, for family, friends, mentors, and I'm just very grateful for that. So that's also a big driver of mine, which it touches on the work that I do with Aviation Without Borders as well.
Oh, I want to come back to Aviation Without Borders in a moment. I'm just looking at the number of questions that we have, and thank you so much. And please keep it coming. I'm trying to kind of connect it all in an interesting and easy to understand narrative. But I'm sorry, we're jumping to different topics because there's so many great thoughts and great
Not
questions.
at all, no problem.
So, I mean, in terms of the challenges, you talked about you like a challenge, but talk to us about the challenges of flight schools and training and choosing flight school. There was a question about would you recommend a flight school abroad potentially, or is the UK, is this the focus? Has it always been the focus for you? Are there any benefits, again, any challenges that you faced? Was it far for you to drive to your flight school? Talk to us about flight schools and challenges.
Yeah, sure. So, two questions that I'll touch on: flight schools and flight training in general first, and my tips for that, and then remind me to come back to the challenges. I don't have a recommendation for a flight school necessarily because I was fortunate to get into a cadet program, and when it came to choosing between, because you were able to give a preference for which flight school, I looked into it and I thought I just picked one that I guess I'd be happy going there, and it looked nice and it was relatively closer compared to Spain, for example. So I'm at Skyborne, which half it is in the UK, so I thought that would be nice. So that's how I picked like that. I do want to take this opportunity though to basically emphasize that people should consider modular routes. So I can quickly touch on integrated versus modular. So integrated programs are programs that sort of take you from zero to hero, you could say. They give you everything you need. You start from ab initio or very little experience, meaning you've done no flying, for example. Then they'll take you through the ATPL ground school, which is the content that you need to learn on the ground, exam based stuff. Then they give you the flight hours that you need, which include single engine flying, multi engine flying, instrument flying. And then you finish up with a couple of extra bits and courses that you need to do, things like your upset recovery, etc. But it's basically a whole package. And by the end of it, you have an FATPL, which is a frozen ATPL. And then you can start to look at airline jobs, essentially, or other types of commercial flying. And the advantage of that is it's sort of all in one place. It's a bit like university or school where you go in, you're guided a lot more. It's usually more expensive, although it's done in a much quicker period of time. So 18 months to 2 years is, I'd say, the average for integrated. Modular is different. So you are quite a bit more self-motivated with modular. You do your own training in the sense that you will do your ground school, and you might choose, let's say, a distance ground school for that, where you go to an organization and you do that bit. So that's the ATPL ground school. Then you might go to a local airfield and get your PPL, which is what I had done. And I was actually in the process of doing this modular route before I was lucky to get in with BA. So I would, for example, you would do your PPL flying, which is your single engine flying, like a Cessna or a Piper aircraft. Then you go to an airfield and you do your multi-engine, and you sort of do it pay as you go. So it's a good option for people that are working, because you can try and fit that in around other commitments. You do it at your own pace, and it's usually actually cheaper when you compare costs in the long run. The reason I'm a huge advocate for modular is that I believe it sort of it forces you to take responsibility for your own training and progression. It allows you to have other commitments, and I think it just makes you quite a well-rounded pilot by the end of it. integrated schools are great as well. If you know that you want to fly for X airline, or you want to do this job as quickly as possible, and you have the opportunity to pay the cost that comes with that, I absolutely see the advantage in going down an integrated route. But I think we often overlook modular routes too quickly, and I think modular training is actually quite a good way to train as well. So I can't actually give recommendations for any flight schools specifically. The other question you mentioned are challenges. So yeah, so I'm happy to go into that, and I'm happy to take any questions about flight training as well. Oh, just before I do move on to challenges, if you are going to go modular, you really do need good mentors that know what they're doing as well, because the lack of guidance can be overwhelming. So just knowing what you need to do, etc. I'd recommend that. Challenges, financial, we've covered. Time commitments. So when I was in medical school, I was doing med school from Monday to Friday, coming back for the weekend to fly to do PPL flying on weekends. So I was juggling quite a few things. What helped me is to understand what I needed to prioritize when. So, for example, if I were when I was coming up to final exams in med school, I didn't fly for a good 2 or 3 months before that, because I knew I had to really focus on my finals. And then after finals, I had a bit more time to fly on weekends, etc. So just knowing what needs to be prioritized, because the worst thing would have been to start flying and then let the other commitments go, and then that just, yeah, you have to be sensible with the risks that you're taking as well. Other challenges, it's a male dominated industry, there's no getting around that. I think it's what, 95% male, and that can have its own challenges. Thankfully I've not had too much of an issue with that. It's a bit of a different environment, but you do get used to it, to be honest. And I'm lucky to have male mentors and female mentors that have helped with that transition. But it's different to medicine, and it might be different to other careers that you're coming from. So that's definitely something that could be a challenge as well. Other specific difficulties, yeah, I would say those are the main ones: financial, academic, environmental. I'll let you know if anything else comes to mind.
No, that's great. Thank you. I mean, let's go back to mentors. You are a role model, an inspiration, and definitely trying to give back. You've talked about giving back. I know how much you give back. I don't know when you find the time. I think it seems like you've got a lot of different lives that you live. You live all at the same time. Giving back is a part of your nature, is how I can summarize it. Talk to us about Aviation Without Borders. You've mentioned a great deal of different organizations, and I'm very, very happy that you're sharing all these resources. I really want for Flakecrowd and our webinars and our sessions and our network to know about all these other resources. It's not about competition, it's about making sure that you are all exposed to, all of our audience are exposed to the right types of support and network and the organizations and anybody and everybody who can help you on your career. So I'm glad, and thank you so much for sharing. Talk to us more about the work that you do, that I presume is the main focus within your volunteering kind of hat that you're wearing. Aviation Without Borders. Talk to us about that. What is it that you guys are doing? Um, can anybody get involved? Why? Tell us more.
Yeah, I would love to. I wish I could say it is my main focus at the minute. I have to say I'm very busy with ground school, so I can't take the
Well,
claim
it's a
that it's
voluntary focus, I
voluntary.
suppose.
I'd
Main
say
voluntary
voluntary
focus.
wise, yes.
Yeah.
It is. So most people are more familiar with Doctors Without Borders, which is what I was obviously familiar with, having been a doctor. And at university we had student clubs as well for MSF, which is what sort of the French. I'm not even going to try and attempt the full French pronunciation, but MSF. And I didn't realize that they had different sort of branches. So I think there's Engineers Without Borders as well, and then I found Aviation Without Borders. And so I dropped them an email, and Junaid, our wonderful chair, replied. And that's how I got involved with the charity, because it really was a way to combine aviation with, first of all, the interest I had in medicine and humanitarian work, but also to use it in a volunteering capacity. And the sort of main focuses of the charity are one, we've got sort of an outreach branch that works on providing outreach opportunities to individuals in this country. For example, insight days or running days at airfields for young people to get involved. I can see the shout out to Junaid. He does a wonderful job. And the other aspect is grant funding. So we basically provide grant funding to various organizations that are aligned with the work that we do, and try to fundraise and apply for those grants, etc. So those are sort of the main branches. It's a small charity, and we are trying to grow our work, although there's a lot of interest, which is so promising. We get so much interest from people, and everyone wants to volunteer and join in, which is brilliant. We're just finding ways to channel that enthusiasm into ways to benefit the charity. So that's how I've been involved over the last year or two, I'd say now.
No, thank you so much for sharing. And I know we've been talking about getting more of you guys into the call. So Janaid, we see you in the audience. We know you're here. We'll be knocking on your doors again. I think it's so important. Yesterday, myself and Robin, our director, we went to a Royal Aeronautical Society charity symposium in London. That was the first time when so many charities around the UK, aviation charities and non-profits all came together. We had so many incredible conversations about the work that needs to be done, the challenges that we're all facing, and really the need to collaborate. So I'm very pleased to say that we will continue those discussions. We already have some catch-ups set up with a number of our partners as well. And I look forward to doing some stuff with you guys as well. I think the work that we're doing, especially for the benefit of the communities, is so important. So yes, I am a collaborator. So please do share. I'm so glad that we're giving all these shout outs to these incredible people. Because we're all doing everything for you guys. Everybody here on the call and everybody here listening to the recording. So yeah, shout out to all the charities and non-profits in this space.
Really.
Amina, there's a few more questions about PPL. Let's come back to the PPL in a moment.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just general aviation. And the work I kind of started alluding to the work that all of us are working on. Everybody's passionate about different things. My personal is focusing on future flight technology, all things drones, electric aviation, sustainable aviation, and making sure that the skies of tomorrow are safe, but also sustainable and diverse, and everybody feels like they fit in. Um, what do you think the future of aviation looks like? How do you see yourself shaping that future? How do you see yourself supporting other people shaping that future? Yeah, tell us what's the future looking like in your opinion?
Big question. Big question.
Maybe we should have started with that.
What does the future of aviation look like? You've touched on a few things, and I would agree with you. I think sustainability is a big one. That will definitely, or that should shape the future of and what direction aviation goes in. So that's definitely important. Yeah, and I'm again sort of backing off of what you've mentioned about diversity and recruitment. There is a skills shortage, and I remember seeing a statistic last year or so it might be outdated, that the average PPL holder age was over 40. And I thought, well, that's, and male, of course, but I was very surprised about the age. There is this a situation where you're getting people with immense talent and skill retiring, and then you're going to end up with a lack of that skill in the workforce. So I think a huge drive for recruitment, and you can see that across all these cadet programs and airline sponsorships as well. Not just in pilot flying, etc., engineering roles, operations, and in so much across the aviation industry. So I think there's going to be a huge emphasis on recruitment, and that's definitely another factor. The future of aviation, well, to be honest, aviation is going to be here to stay, I believe. I think we're always going to be relying on aviation and transport and aircraft for commercial purposes, humanitarian purposes, and different things. So I, but no, that's a good question that I think I might need to go and do a bit more reflecting on, to be honest.
Well, there's another one coming, and so prepare yourself. How about pilots? Aviation is here to stay. How about pilots? And that isn't actually coming from you, that is coming from our audience. The demand for pilots is increasing, and more people are looking to get into aviation. But how does that work with the future flight, autonomous aircraft that we're developing? Are you afraid of the jobs of tomorrow? Do you think there's going to be enough sky for everybody?
I mean,
Enough
that's a
jobs,
good
enough
question.
opportunities? Yeah, but how about enough opportunities for pilots? Are we gonna need to reskill, upskill?
I mean,
See.
you know what? Similar conversations are happening in medicine. So when it comes to specific specialties like radiology, which are doctors that are trained to interpret scans, people say that, oh, that's a redundant job. In 10 years, AI is going to be picking up breast cancers more accurately. And I think there was actually, this was all sparked by a study, I believe, that came out showing how immensely accurate AI was at picking up cancers on scans and images, x-rays, etc. Um, and my personal belief on that is I don't believe it's going to get rid of the job entirely. It might change what the job is. It could be that you're just relying more on automation, relying more on the AI, but ultimately there's that human to make final judgment. That's one way I see it changing. In aviation, as we have automated systems so much, and I'm talking not AI, but just generally how autonomous these aircraft are, increasingly the pilot is almost, could be said to be a weaker link, for example. So, but I don't see that as a reason why you then would downgrade to single pilot ops. I think that's the reason why it's really important you have two people in the flight deck. But that's my personal opinion. Whether or not that becomes a reality in the future, I guess we will have to see. But I personally do see the importance of having two individuals as redundancy, as you do in so many different systems within aviation.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing. I know it's hard to predict the future. And as somebody who's is working in this field, it's very interesting where a lot of the companies are looking at very much removing the pilot or putting the pilot into a different role. So pilot on the kind of supervising and you're right, it's maybe doing less manual inputs, but maybe even being on the ground or giving that job or to air traffic management until we then start automating and creating unmanned traffic management as well. There's definitely a lot of the worries or a lot of the discussions, I should say. But my biggest concern, my biggest takeaway from all of this is, and it shows. Looking at, I don't know if you know, Amazon has recently needed to halve their plans of using drones around. They were planning to start operating drones here in the UK and doing. I believe the number was about 20 flights an hour. Oh, maybe I'm definitely misquoting this. And so they were told to half the number of flights because of the public concerns. And so the reason I'm kind of mentioning all this is because no matter, in my opinion, how incredibly advanced the technology is and where we are hoping to get to, from the engineering perspective, I think there's certainly the public that we need to be mindful of, and the public will always be pro having a pilot on board. It's that trust in the pilot, trust that the human will always make a better decision than a clever computer. So from a personal perspective, yes, there has been already a lot of discussions in the industry looking at the economies of removing the pilot altogether or having a single pilot operating. But I guarantee you it will take quite a significant amount of time because going to the public, nobody wants it. We want talented, skilled workforce very much operating these aircraft of today and aircraft of tomorrow, the so-called air taxis, the VTOLs. I mean, have you looked into that at all, Amina? Have you looked at the electric aviation and does that inspire, does that excite you, that prospect? Do you see yourself operating one of those air taxis, or are you a more current commercial aviation girl?
No, that's a good question. I don't know much about the electric world, to be honest with you, but I know. for example, there's scholarships at Saxon Air. They've got an aircraft there that's like entirely electric. It's a light
Yeah.
aircraft, which I think is
Yes.
which is really cool. But I actually have not delved all that much into this world, although it looks very cool and really exciting. But I agree with the things that you're saying, and I don't think it should be a reason not to go into this career because you think you're going to be replaced by a robot. Your skills are always going to be useful, and it's always worthwhile investing in those. I don't think you should be put off because it's all going to be automated and you're going to be redundant.
No, 100%. And yes, Saxon Air, they do operate an electric aircraft. So Saxon Air is one of our partner organizations. They're based
Oh,
in Norwich.
yes.
And we have actually done so I know you've mentioned the Air League scholarships. They have opened recently the new intake of scholarships. Flight Crouch has also done our scholarships earlier this year, and one of them was with Saxon Air as well. So we are in fact several of our first cohort of scholars have been using their funds to put towards their pilots experience and piloting lessons. But one of the other scholarships that we have launched was with Saxon Air, where students can get the opportunity of getting in front of the electric aircraft, not just in front of it, but very much flying it, seeing how it's operated, and that I know is also can count towards your PPL. I think it is super exciting. There aren't, unfortunately, enough opportunities around the UK for everybody to jump in an electric aircraft, but Saxon in Norwich are definitely doing that great work. We've been working with yes, Air League also doing some great work. Oh, this is turning into a webinar of shout outs to everybody, which I'm glad. I'm glad. This is hopefully plenty of useful information and good links. Um, if we can very briefly go back to a few more questions around, these are now getting over my head. I am by no means a pilot. I am an engineer sitting here trying my best and holding an intelligent conversation with a woman who's much more intelligent than myself. But talking about PPLs, so EASA, CA, there's loads of different there's loads of different regulatory bodies available out there. Would you say that EASA is more powerful? Would you, when it comes to choosing whether to go down the CAA certification route or look into EASA training, talk to us about that. How did you make your choice? Um, any kind of preferences, any suggestions over which one to choose? The UK's, of course, left the EU, so the CAA and the EASA, the two commercial licenses are separate. Talk to us a bit about that.
I'm assuming that the individual asking is talking about airline commercial long-term flying. So I started off doing it very much as a hobby, as an interest. So the CAA PPL route was sufficient for me. So my medical was the CAA, my PPL was CAA, because I wasn't really thinking about airlines at the time. Then when I applied to cadet programs, I was fortunate to get into BAs, which is obviously CAA. So that made the decision for me. And everything since has been CAA because of my citizenship, I think, and BA being based in the UK, CAA is sufficient. I don't need EASA. Um, Whether or not you do both or you do one isn't something I can really comment on because I've not had to look into that decision myself, to be honest. I can share things that I've heard. I've heard that if you do both, I think you need to do two sets of exams for ground school, but please verify that, which might be a bit more costly. However, I'd imagine that it does open up more opportunities for different carriers afterwards. So you will have to do a bit more research on that. Sorry, I don't have much information to give. And in terms of which I can see, sorry, I can see the next question is sort of linked. Which regional airlines? It depends on why you're going into flying, what your passion and motivation is. For me, I just like to fly, so I would have flown for anyone and anything. I wouldn't have been picky about, oh, I don't want this airline. I would have applied to every scholarship, every cadet program. I applied to Aer Lingus. If I were able to, I would have applied to TUI as well, and Jet2. I'd give it all a go. Airline flying, you've got many great airlines in the UK and in Europe, and you're not necessarily committed to one for life. So you can always take a look afterwards and see what journey you want to go into and experiment with different things. But I don't know what your motivation is necessarily. So you might have a dream airline that you've always just wanted to fly for, and that's all you've ever wanted to do. So I can't comment specifically, but that was my experience anyway.
No, that's wonderful. And I mean, they're probably in at this point. We've talked about so many things. I don't even know. I wouldn't even try to summarize everything. But if I was to ask you one last question, probably from my side, um, taking you looking back at your younger self, say you're 16 years old, what advice would you give your younger self? I know there's quite a few members of the audience who are in a similar position. There's quite a few slightly older members of the audience as well. But let's talk about your younger self. What would you say to you?
I would probably say get your head down and just and study and do well in school and learn not just for exams, but learn for your own curiosity, learn about the world, follow your interests and take opportunities. Don't consider yourself too young to begin to explore things that you might want to do. Um, but I don't know, maybe that's the Asian in me saying get down and study. I don't know if that's necessarily advice that would apply to everyone, but I think school is a very good opportunity to learn about the world and it shapes how you think and um, I was very grateful for my experiences in school. I think it really benefited me in what I did in medicine and aviation and just staying curious always is what I would say.
No, brilliant. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm happy to answer this one question that's come through if you're happy. I
Um,
don't want.
I was going to actually say, I mean, would you be happy to stay in touch and share your any opportunities for our young people, for our audience
Yeah,
to follow you on social media? What's the best way to kind of continue
the
the
best way if you're happy for me is to message on Instagram. So that's probably the one thing that I use more. LinkedIn, I'm not on very often, to be honest. I can put it in the chat now. And then if you've
great.
got any questions or anything, I'm more than happy to follow up. Or if I can't help, to try and point you in the right direction at least.
No, that's brilliant. And then when we'll be posting the recording on YouTube as well, I'll be able to share that. So don't worry, you're not missing out on anything if you can't see the chat. No, this is brilliant. And Amina, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It's been great to catch up. I know that the times are so busy. You are literally in the middle of exam season. Wishing you the best of luck with that. And I just wanted to say that the time is so, so precious. The way that you've managed to find time and make time for things that matter to you is, I commend you. And it's just to me, I think I said it in one of our stories when I was talking about the webinar, inviting our audience to join us today your example. It just shows that with enough time and energy and hard work and just dedication and just knowing what you want, just put all of that together and you can do anything. And I like to say the sky is not the limit, the sky is the playground. And you, my dear, are showing us just that. So thank you so much. Can we all put our hands virtually to say thank you to Amina and for joining us on this session today and for sharing all your wisdom. Oh, I love it. I love the virtual clapping coming through as well. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much. And lastly, from myself, I know there are so many of our members of this session who are very new today. Oh, brilliant. Love it. Love all the love hearts. And gets me super excited. I was going to say, there's loads of our recurring members of our community who are here. There's loads of new people. So just wanted to share one last resource with you in case you are new to Flight Crowd. Please do stay in touch with us. We've got so many opportunities. This is the final event of the year for 2025, but we are working on so many incredible virtual and in-person programs coming up. So please join our free WhatsApp community channel. There's one QR code over there, and you'll be able to join a supportive network of people, industry mentors, our peers, young people, volunteers, all sorts of incredibly talented individuals. You can volunteer, and please just get in touch with us. There's all sorts of contact details below. Join us as a mentor or a mentee. We do run mentoring program, more on that in other webinars. Attend our events, become a member, partner, donate, and stay in touch. There's so many ways in which you can get involved, and in return, we promise you to deliver incredible opportunities, support you every single step of your way, and make sure that you expand your network and we expose you to incredible organizations and individuals that we are proud to call our friends and partners. So thank you all so much for your time today. Let's leave it at that. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. And thank you all. Thanks so much, Amina, once again. Take care of
Thank you
yourself.
so much. Bye bye.
Cheers. Thank you. Goodbye.